Hello, everyone from Chelsea Fan TV. I hope you're all doing very well, guys. Welcome back to another episode of 3 Points Perspective, the show where we speak about 3 different points and we have 3 different perspectives around that. Today, honestly, there's so much news going around, but we've got a lot of news that's come out recently. Obviously, there's the race for Champions League football, which we're going to be speaking about. How we can do in each of those games, what our predictions are going into those matches. Chelsea apparently are willing to sign some more experienced players in the summer. I mean, that sounds like a load of waffle to me and PR, but apparently that is the case if you hear from David Ornstein and Fabrizio, people like that. And Abramovich has decided that he's going to release a book. He's done his first interview in over 4 years. So that's brand new news that's come out, and I'm sure Chelsea's going to be a huge part of that story. So it'll be interesting to see when that comes out as well. Nina, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm feeling better today, touch wood. But yeah, not too bad. I think, obviously you guys were at the Fulham game and I was watching it on telly. Charlie and I were talking yesterday, saying that, the emotions were running high in the end, but, we did sort of dissect the performance and say there were some obvious flaws. But, obviously watching the City Villa game last night, a few calls for concerns there. And, you are a little bit worried as a Chelsea fan with the point we've hit in the season. So, there's a lot to play for now. I mean, there was a lot to play for, but, it's very important from here on that we really get our stuff together and pull through some moments of magic, because that's what we need. We need some magic, some luck, and some very serious mentality going into the next few games. So I'm feeling all right, a bit worried, but feeling okay.
What about you, Charlie?
Yeah, no, all good, mate. Yeah, it was a bit disappointing to see City get the win last night. A draw would have been ideal. But ultimately, as I said before, it's kind of we need to stop worrying about what other teams do and focus on what we're doing. It's completely pointless worrying about other teams if we don't pick up the points that we need to pick up ourselves. So try not to look at other fixtures like that anymore, because it's just a bit of a waste of time, in my opinion, because Chelsea have got to do their part of the bargain. So, yeah, and there's a big question mark surrounding whether we can actually do that or not. It is in our hands, but we've got to do something that we've been incapable of doing for a number of years, and that's beating a top side and probably winning away from home against a difficult team as well. So, the odds are stacked against us.
This is the thing. We were in control. We were in pole position, and we've lost that.
Well, we technically still are in control because we beat Newcastle and Forest. We should be all right. But yeah.
Well, yeah, when you put it like that, yes. But I mean, I guess I rewind and I just sort of look at Brentford and Ipswich as matches that most Chelsea fans expected us to win. And Fulham was another game I guess we were supposed to win, but actually because of the way we'd performed in the previous matches, we were like, I don't really know what's going to happen here. Wouldn't be surprised if we drew this game. And we won, but it was hardly convincing. But we won. And ultimately, we've said this. I know you've said this, Charlie, it's just about getting points on the board. And as long as we can get points, then I don't care how we get them. But then you say to yourself, are we going to be able to find that consistency in these last few games? Obviously, we've got Everton coming up. They've significantly improved under David Moyes. You got Liverpool, who could potentially have already won the title by the time they come to Stamford Bridge, or even could win the title.
They're playing Spurs, mate. They're going to win the league. They've got Spurs at Anfield this weekend. They're obviously winning the league, so it will be the first team to give them a guard of honour.
Not ideal. But I mean, it's better than them winning the league.
Yeah, exactly. I'd rather do the guard of honour than them win the league at our ground. So we just have to take it.
And then we've got, who is it? Then we've got
Newcastle away, Man United home, Forest away.
United at home, and Forest away.
Yeah,
that is a hard running. It's a hard running. But the nice thing about it is, if you do have any faith and you're a Chelsea player or Maresca, is there's 6 points that you can get there against Newcastle and Forest, that could be so defining for us. And even if we slip up in another game, Lord knows we probably will, there is actually the opportunity to still overtake those two teams if they slip up as well, because you're going to be playing up against them. So I don't know, man.
Well, I think if we can get to Forest away on the last day of the season and still be in with a shout, if we need a result against Forest on the final day to get Champions League, I think given the running and given how things have panned out over the second half of the season, I'd take that scenario right now. Going to Forest and needing to win, or going to Forest and needing not to lose. I'd definitely take that scenario.
I think what I'm a little bit sad about is the fact that it's coming down to that those games are so decisive and are so integral in this Champions League race, because I think we put ourselves in that position, and like Charlie said at the start, it's like you can't help but look at other teams and hope that they drop points and make mistakes as well, but it shouldn't be that way. And I think, we always look back to that December run where we had games that we said, this is a very easy run that we can really gain an advantage. So come this time of the year, going into these games, they are not... Obviously, every game is a must win. As fans, we expect that, but not to have the pressure on these remaining games that we do. So I just think, we don't necessarily have the players that have been in a position where, this point in the season, they've been through it. They understand how important it is and how much every single game matters, how much every error you make matters, how much every goal you concede matters. And it actually is that deep. It is that deep. So I'm just looking at the players thinking, yes, of course, Maresca, we're looking to him to inspire some motivation in the team, but also the players and their own mentality. And I do, me and Charlie were talking about this yesterday. I do believe that they want to win, they want to compete for each other, they have this very nice little group relationship chemistry going on, whatever. But when it comes to rising to the occasions and the big moments, I'm just worried that not all of them know what it takes now for the end of the season, how important this run is. It's a lot of pressure, and we've seen in games where we're chasing or we're behind that pressure does get to us, and it's very easy to look at some of these games and think, we could find ourselves in a position where we're having to chase maybe and trail like we were against Fulham. So we found it in us to find some moments of brilliance, but we're not going to probably get that every single game. So I'm just hoping that we could put ourselves in pole position for most of them and really, really take control, because it's something we haven't really seen. Like Alex, you mentioned earlier, consistency has been... It's been quite difficult for us, hasn't it? Every time we think we gain a bit of momentum, we lose or we draw. It's been months since we last won 3 games on the bounce in the Prem, and that's something that we were doing with ease. Remember, we racked up 5-6 wins in a row in the sweep period earlier this season. Sorry. So consistency is a big thing, and if we can actually get some consistency now until the end of the season, it's probably the best time to do it. But yeah, mentality is a big thing now as well, I think. Yeah, of course, quality on the pitch, but it's how hungry as a team, as a collective, how hungry are you? How much what this means? Because you look at City for their standards have been abysmal this season, but they have a group of players who understand where they are in the season and how important it is. Just pick yourselves up right now, grind out the results till the end of the year, call it a year, move on, be in the Champions League, build on from summer. But we've got a very, very different group of young players who are all very much learning still. So mentality is going to be crucial from these remaining games.
I mean, that comeback against Fulham and the scenes at full time and all the happiness and stuff.
Yeah,
whatever, that's completely it's nice, but that's completely pointless if we then don't follow it up with a win against Everton.
Exactly.
It doesn't count for anything unless you can build the momentum. That and that's the
it's
key.
Like Tottenham, isn't it? After Tottenham, and then going on to just be
draw the next 2 games after Tottenham. So yeah,
exactly.
This is where you got to take advantage. This is where you got to try and start to put some sort of a run together. And I know people hate games being referred to as cup finals, but these last 5 league games are all cup finals. They're all must win in terms of Champions League football. of course, no one in the running is going to have 100% record. Like all the teams that are going for that top 5 will drop points. But I just don't have the faith in us to be able to put together a run of wins that we need and to play to a standard that can get us the wins, because we can't rely on moments of individual brilliance to bail us out or last minute goals to get us over the line. You know, that's not a sustainable way of doing things. You can do that a few times over the course of a season, but to rely on that for what, three wins that we probably need in the last 5 games is not sustainable. And despite the win against Fulham, the performance still wasn't that good. And if we perform like that in our remaining games, we're probably not going to pick up many points.
Yeah. I see. I'm very much on the side that you can rely on individuals, but then
not every week,
it depends how you play, and that's where last season I think players like Palmer benefited from being given the freedom, which I don't think he necessarily has under Maresca in this system. So, you know, obviously you don't want to just lean on individuals all the time, but ultimately you're a football team, 11 players, and you're going to have 1 or 2 key players. And it doesn't matter how good your team is, whether you're Liverpool, whether you're United, whether you're Chelsea, you got 1 or 2 players that are going to bail you out most of the time. It could be Salah, it could be Fernandes. In our case, it's just Palmer. So the idea of restricting what Palmer can do and not allowing him the freedom to operate. And look, we know he's creative in the system. There's no doubt about that. His stats are very good. I just don't see why that's, you know, so beneficial. I actually think that that's just a very strange way to play him, bearing in mind you don't have a striker who can finish all of those chances, or multiple players who are able to finish those chances. I mean, Jackson's not the only one. You know, so I would like to have seen Palmer being given a little bit more freedom at times, and I think that's still something that can be done. By the way, do I think it will happen? Probably not. Although when I've spoken to Leicester fans in the past, you know, and I haven't had detailed conversations about this, but, you know, I've had sort of casual conversations. They said towards the end of last season in the Championship, Maresca did change his tactics a little bit, and he wasn't as stringent just to get Leicester over the finish line, because they were dropping so many points and they had like a 21-point lead, and then that went down to about 2 or 3 points. So if he's willing to change and adapt to get Chelsea where they need to be, that would be fantastic. But I don't know whether it would happen. I don't know how it would happen. I can't see Maresca setting us up to counter or anything like that. But listen, there's nothing wrong with counter-attacking football. There's nothing wrong with going long. There's nothing wrong with, you know, changing some of the positioning of players like Palmer and put him on the right just to see what happens. And you've got to experiment a little bit, because we are flat as anything right now. It's a very uninspiring team to watch. Like, forget the goals that we scored against Fulham. The football itself was not good. But maybe that's a catalyst for us to come back. Maybe we just needed a confidence boost. Who knows? We'll see. We'll see what happens. But let us know in the chat what you think, guys. Do you think we will finish in a Champions League position? I personally don't. I don't think you do, Charlie. Same with you, Nina?
The hopeless fan in me is like, yes, we can do it. Because, you know, I just always believe. It's like my biggest downfall. But if I look at it realistically, and, you know, I'm sorry, I can't help but look at other teams as well, then my mind is telling me probably not. But there's always a chance. And until it's mathematically impossible, then it's not really over. And, you know, we might sneak in there. We might surprise ourselves and everyone else. Whether we deserve to be there is a whole other conversation that there's really not much point in having, because it was an expectation from the start. But, you know, if we miss out, then we have only ourselves to blame, which is, you know, says it all really. But a part of me still thinks we can do it. And I'm just going to hang on to that for my own sanity for the time being.
I respect it. I mean, you got to have some hope somewhere. So I guess nothing wrong with it. Me personally, struggling Struggling
I mean,
to see
Alex,
that.
you said we wouldn't like time ago, like you said it months ago.
I said as soon as the January window closed, it was done because we weakened the squad, others strengthened. And as soon as that happened,
Yeah, but you still went through like uphills in the.
yeah, but still the underlying feeling was it's not going to happen.
You flip flopping, Charlie.
Yeah,
No,
he was
no,
like,
no.
"Oh, guys, maybe we can do it. Maybe we can do
Yeah,
it."
that's not flip flopping. But I've always maintained my stance since January window closed is we're not doing it.
Show us the
Sorry.
receipts, Charlie.
Yeah.
Show us the receipts.
So
Yeah, don't worry. Actually, viewers, show us the receipts because they're very good at remembering things.
I've not changed my mind on it. You know, that's for me. Yeah, January window closed, and that was it. So look, if I'm wrong, I'd love to be wrong, but I'm just not
You
seeing
really
any.
wouldn't. You'd love to be right a little bit, though, wouldn't you?
No, of course I wouldn't. I want Chelsea to be in the Champions League more than anything. You know, I want us to be back where we need to be, back where we belong. And you know, but I just haven't seen the evidence over this entire second half of the season to suggest that we can get the points required against the teams we've got to face to finish in the top 5. That's just the reality.
Yeah.
But if I'm wrong, I'd be absolutely delighted.
Yeah. Like, last season when there was so many games where we were like, no, we're not getting anything out of it from the start. And then we surprised ourselves. Like, we'd turn up for some of the really big games, even if we'd, gotten 2 draws against City. Those were probably some of our highlights of the season last year, like getting draws where we did against, Arsenal, whatever. It's like, no, actually, we lost to Arsenal last year. What am I talking about? No, didn't we draw at home to Arsenal last year?
Yeah, we should have won though, but we fucked it.
Yes, that's right.
Sanchez,
yes, that's right. Yeah. But what I'm saying is we still somehow made it to, Wembley twice. We played a cup final and we played a semi-final, and we surprised ourselves even in a season where we were very low. And it's kind of like, how is it that this season when, we've had better sort of play of football and there's been kind of, bigger uphill trajectories, obviously at the start of the season, that, we're going into this remaining kind of periods with very little hope that we can turn up for some of these games. And that's kind of the little unpredictability from Chelsea I miss. We're not unpredictable, we're predictable. And that's almost a weakness now, because I could trust that last year we'd still turn up with a little something, surprise ourselves. But the fact that
chaotic last season with no structure, no nothing, it was just chaos. So like
chaos left, right, and centre. Yeah, exactly. But I kind of miss that. You want a little bit of that for the end. Obviously, you want to win games, but just surprise ourselves against a tough opponent, because we have such little faith in these remaining games. But we've got to beat United again at home at some point. We've got to get could get a point against Liverpool. I don't know. It's just me being again hopeless, but who knows? We'll see. It's just that hope that kills you. Do you know what I mean?
It's true. It is true. Listen, we've also had a number of journalists. I think Simon Phillips has come out, as well as David Ornstein, maybe Fabrizio. Definitely Simon Phillips and David Ornstein. They've come out and said that Chelsea are going to be looking to sign more experienced players in summer, that there isn't this sort of under 21 policy. If it's the right player, then they're willing to sign them and pay better wages as well. Van Dijk was apparently an option before he signed his new contract at Liverpool. Personally, I think that would have been a decent signing, to be fair. But, some of the other names that are going around, Kevin De Bruyne, I think Jonathan Tah is another player whose contract's going to expire at Bayern Leverkusen. It's all great talking about these players, but then I genuinely do think to myself, like, where do they fit in? Why would we sign them? And how much would we be willing to pay these guys? Because it's all great saying you're willing to pay a little bit more, but does that mean that De Bruyne is capped at 150 grand a week at Chelsea? Like, what's the cap here? I don't understand. We haven't really heard enough to get specific, but me personally, I just don't really see where that fits into this project, how that helps us. I mean, we really needed that this season. We're a little bit late on that front.
Well, I think look, there's not an awful lot of evidence right now from the business we've done in recent windows to suggest that we are prepared to do that. But I do think, and look, you know, these journalists that are reporting it, you know, the likes of Ornstein, Fabrizio, and whatnot, these are two of the most connected football journalists in the world. You know,
Yeah.
People can choose what they want to believe at the end of the day, but you know, these guys have got the sources. They know what they're talking about. And look, to a certain degree as well, the information they're given is going to be what the club want out there ultimately, because that information is coming from people connected to the club or coming directly from the club itself. And all the information that comes out is what the club want you to hear or what the club are happy to be out there. So to a certain degree, that reporting is reporting the club line, because that's where that information's come from. But I do think to a certain extent, we would be prepared to bring the right player in. Why Osimhen last summer wasn't the right player to pay that money for, or the extra money for, I'm not entirely sure. But I feel that maybe with one or two we might do it. But I just worry at who they think might be the exceptions, because if Osimhen wasn't the exception, or if others weren't the exception, then who would be the exception this summer?
No one.
We know De Bruyne's on ridiculous money at Man City, and if he goes to MLS, he's taking a pay cut. If he goes to Saudi, obviously he's not taking a pay cut. But anywhere else in Europe, if he remains in Europe, he'll have to take a pay cut. But I don't imagine. I find it very hard to believe that De Bruyne would return to Chelsea, you know, at his age, at this stage of his career. And with the way things are right now at the club. But look, Van Dijk would have been a good signing. We needed Thiago Silva type signing at the back, and experienced centre half. Chelsea have shown that they will take advantage of the free agent market as well. I mean, Tosin come in, I know he's not like the same caliber, but you know, he's 27 years of age. Yeah. So that I guess goes more towards.
What do you mean? Captain Lee's a legend, Tosin.
Look, someone like Jonathan Tah on a free wouldn't be a bad signing. So at the end of the day, proof of being a pudding. Is all very well seeing these reports and this stuff coming out, but the actions will speak louder than words. So until I see it myself, I'm still always going to be a little bit skeptical, even though I think if the right player's available and the right deal's available, we will do it. Until we do it, it kind of means very little.
I mean, Jonathan Tah's a name that's gone around. I haven't watched much of Bayern Leverkusen, to be honest with you, Charlie. So I wouldn't know much about it. But I've heard good things about Jonathan Tah. You know, he's obviously a more experienced player, very tall centre back, got lots of height in there as well, which we already have with Tosin, but we don't necessarily have the quality. So maybe Tah is a realistic starter for Chelsea, a more reliable player that we could have in there. Osimhen, a name that's been chucked around. Personally, I'd love to see Osimhen. He's my number one choice. He's my number one choice by far. But you know, people seem to have this notion that I'm promoting the signing of Liam Delap over Victor Osimhen and Victor Gyökeres and these guys. It's not that I prefer Delap. It's that I see what we've done. I see where we're going. I see what we're doing. And I see our wage structure and everything like that. And I just think, where does Osimhen fit into that? Like, what have we proven based on the past couple of years of signings that we've made that Osimhen is the type of player that we're going to bring in? And you still persuade yourself after 3 years of watching what we've been doing to our club, ripping out all of our experience, taking out most of the highest earners. Obviously, there are still a couple on the books. And replacing them with players on low wages, long contracts, low wages, incentivized contracts. Where does Osimhen fit into that?
He doesn't.
I'm not seeing that. So that's where Liam Delap is a realistic signing. And also a signing that would benefit Chelsea. I'm not saying he would benefit Chelsea as much as Victor Osimhen would. I'm not deluded here, but this is a guy who scored, 12, 13 goals with Ipswich, a poor Ipswich side. And it makes you realise, well, if he was playing with a team in and around the top 4, top 5, how many more could he get? I guess the other argument is, does he fit into the system? You know, he does a lot of counter-attacking with Ipswich. He scored a few pens. You know, these are all things that can be debated. But as with any player, you would presume if they're good enough, they would perform better in a better team. And Chelsea is clearly a better team than Ipswich. So if he's getting 12 goals with them, what's to say he can't get 18, 19 with us?
But there's also the argument that he hasn't played against a low block really once this season, because no one sits deep and puts men behind the ball against Ipswich. All teams attack Ipswich because of how poor they are. Whereas at Chelsea, you look at Delap, a lot of his best moments come on the transition, come on the counter at Ipswich, because teams commit a lot of men forward against them and teams attack them because of a lack of quality in the side. Whereas at Chelsea, not the majority of teams will sit back low to mid block with a lot of men behind the ball. How will he adapt to that system? I'm not saying, by the way, he can't adapt to that way of playing, but that would be a big question mark for me over Delap, is how he'd adapt to not having as much space and time on the ball, not playing on the counter or playing on transitions as much. How much will that impact his game?
I think that, and do you know what the main thing is? It just brings something different as well.
Yeah, of course.
We speak about goals. Obviously, he's a striker who's going to score goals. But how is he different to Nicholas Jackson? How is he different to Mark Guiu? We can all agree he's an upgrade on Mark Guiu. He's a better player than Mark Guiu. He's more proven in the Premier League than Mark Guiu. Jackson, at this moment in time, you would say Jackson's a better player. But what does Delap do that's different? He doesn't take as much time to shoot. He just takes a shot. He's a classic striker in that sense. I think they're both quite good on the counter. I'd say Jackson's decent in that regard. Delap is an aerial threat. Jackson isn't. So these are players that they have different profiles. Osman's a different profile as well, by the way. Like, Osman actually is just good at everything we're speaking about. Maybe not quite the link up that you get with Jackson, but you get a pure finisher. Get a great aerial threat. You get a prolific striker. When we speak about Delap and these things, like, this is again on the assumption that he's going to perform. We don't know if Delap's going to cut it at Chelsea. We can say with quite a lot of certainty that Osman would score 20 goals or more. I think we can all agree on that. So, I mean, we'll have to see, won't we? I guess it also depends on who we get out the door. We're going to look to sell players early. We've already got, what's his name, Kwenda Anasugu from Sporting. We have a good relationship with Sporting Lisbon. Maybe that can help with regards to Gyökeres. I think as far as we've heard, probably won't, because he just wants to play in the Champions League. I mean, what do you think about it, Nina?
Regarding Osimhen, I've said this now in quite a few videos. I don't think it's ever happening at Chelsea, and I just think that the very fact our club screams we're signing Liam Delap in summer, and we just might think about someone else, but this is all we could have at the end. And we were saying yesterday that if Liam Delap comes through, for me, great. Okay, he's an addition, but he's not someone that I look at who upgrades our team by a mile. Do you know what I mean? And we've been yearning to have that player, especially a centre forward that comes in and elevates us, takes us to the next level. We need goals coming from a centre forward, and we absolutely need that box presence. We need a target man and someone that is just going to be prolific in front of goal without the massive risk factor that we've been seeing in recent times with the signings we've been making. So, Delap, I think, is good as an addition, but he's not someone that comes in and instantly elevates us. That's my biggest problem. So if he comes in, I think we need somebody else as well, if that makes sense. And I think that Delap is the most easy signing to make in terms of, pursuit, attraction. You don't really need to worry about him not wanting to go to a club that's now in the Premier League. Regardless, really, if we're in the Champions League or not, I don't really worry about that. But, the very fact that a player like Osimhen was on the table last summer and perhaps most realistic time to sign him, and we didn't, none of that makes me believe that we'll go and sign him this summer. And again, I just don't see which player it is that we bend our kind of model and wage structure for to get over the the door, and we haven't done that time and time again when the opportunity had presented itself. So I think for me, ideally, I'd look at someone like Gyökeres. For me, he's probably the most attractive prospect in terms of his contribution, the fact that he looks like he could still probably improve a lot of elements to his game. And, again, he kind of fills me with a little bit more confidence in terms of there's less of a risk factor there. You've seen what he can do. You've seen how many goals he can score. You can see that he's got, great movement, and he is a player that elevates his team. So Delap is fine, but that's the problem. It's fine. It's not something that, I am absolutely itching to happen. I think, it's great. The goals he scored for Ipswich, he's definitely made their season much, much better, and probably made Ipswich a little bit better to watch as well. But I just think that the hype has been elevated a little bit there with Liam Delap. And I think he's a good player, but he's not an outstanding player. And
problem is, though, there's only 2 strikers who are realistically available this summer that take you to the level that that's required. That's Osimhen and that's Gyökeres. Those are the only 2 that are available this summer that will that will make the difference that Chelsea fans want, and will make the difference to the team that we need. And the reality is, we weren't prepared to pay Osimhen the wages last summer. So why on earth would we suddenly decide 12 months later, oh, we'll pay the wages now? That for me is just not happening. And then with Gyökeres, look, I'm sure there's interest there. I'm sure when we were negotiating with Sporting over those Quenda and Asugu deals, we would have mentioned it in conversation. But all the reports are suggesting that he prefers a move to Arsenal over Chelsea. And as much as it will hurt us to say this, I can't blame him. Why would you join Chelsea right now when you can go to Arsenal, be the first choice number 9, and you're going into a team that's ready, not necessarily going to win the big trophies, but is going into a team who are in a position to win trophies and challenge for the biggest trophies right away. We can't even offer Champions League football right now, and we're certainly not in a position to be challenging for the biggest trophies available in the game. So when you take those things into consideration, we are shopping at the next level down. And that's just the reality, unfortunately, for us at this point in time.
It's true. It is true. Our reality on the pitch is fairly obvious based on what we're seeing. But one of the mad things as well, especially looking at Abramovich, who, for those of you who don't know, is going to be releasing a book, and he's going to speak about Chelsea. He's going to break his silence on the sale of Chelsea. The book's going to be released this summer, and it's the first interview that Abramovich is doing in 4 years. Now, this is incredible because you would never strike Abramovich as someone to write a book, especially not for financial reasons.
It's a biography, so someone else is writing it on his behalf, but he's giving the interviews,
He's giving the interviews, but someone else is writing a book about him. Okay, that's fair enough. But it's interesting though, isn't it? Because a lot of people write books, especially celebrities, and they say, "Oh, I want to share my story." Yeah, all right. You want to share your bank? Are
you Roman Abramovich?
That's what you want to share. You want to get paid. That's why you write this book. Abramovich doesn't need the money, so I mean, there's a clear reason he's doing it. He wants people to understand what's happened, and share his experience, which I'd be very intrigued. I'll definitely be trying to read that book. I think it's an incredible story that he has, his rise. Some would argue that, and I think there's probably a good argument, that there's a lot of stuff that happened in Russia that maybe wasn't as, how would we say it, legal.
Oh, he's a dodgy geezer. There's no denying it. Of course he is, but we all know that, and I don't think anyone's.
But on a footballing sense, brilliant guy.
Yeah, of course. You
can only speak about Abramovich the way we know him. I know him as a football man.
Yeah, but
we're not delving into the world of politics here on Chelsea Fan TV.
But we also have to acknowledge. But we also have to acknowledge that he's dodgy, and that's fine. He is. He's made his money in a dodgy way, and loads of people,
Charlie, have a bit of respect. It's Don Roman we're talking about,
and loads of people have done the same thing. But yeah, it'll be interesting because obviously a lot of people have wanted to hear his side of what happened. A lot of people feel, the club and Roman were, treated unfairly by the UK government in terms of being forced to sell the club and the sanctions that were placed on the club. And it will be very interesting to hear his part, to hear his view on proceedings, how it affected him, how he's how it all unfolded from his point of view. So yeah, that is going to be interesting. I think it's something that a lot of people have been waiting for. Sort of something you wonder whether you're ever going to hear his point of view, or you might have to wait 10, 15 years afterwards. But yeah, it's his first interviews I think he's done 2 interviews that are going to form the main basis of the book. And those took place last year. And those were his first interviews he's done in 4 years. You barely ever heard from him during his time at Chelsea. And this goes to show how little he does speak with the media and how, closed a person he is in terms of speaking out about things. So this could make for a fascinating read.
Definitely, 100%. I mean, if you actually, there's an article that came out from The Athletic a day or two ago regarding the financial situation at Chelsea. And obviously our losses at Chelsea have increased. Our operating losses has increased massively since Bowley and Clearlake have been involved in the club. The 23-24 accounts and the 22-23 accounts and the 21-22 accounts, all over 200 million. Whereas everything before that was at least under 200 million. We've always generally had operating losses. But I mean, everything's just gone up by 10, so much. Now the equivalent over the past decade, Chelsea have lost 1.291 billion at the operating level, and that is the equivalent of £354,000 per day, every single day for 10 years. And when I thought about it, when you actually think about that, that is incredible. Like, obviously, we've accelerated the process with the past 3 years, but to think that majority of the time Roman was carrying that debt, that financial weight on his own, couldn't care less, and he was allowing Chelsea to be successful out of his own back pocket. And I don't think we'll ever see another owner like that in world football. Forget it, Chelsea. Because everybody's getting involved in football for the wrong reasons nowadays, unfortunately. And this is a man who just loved the club, loved the game, and wanted to have the best team in the world, and did do that. He did do that. So, he went to achieve something at Chelsea, and he did it. It's a little bit sad, actually, thinking about it. Now looking at what we're stuck with, private equity, Balance the Books FC, Counting Firm FC, all the rest of it. I mean, Nina, what's your take?
Getting a bit emotional here, guys, hearing all this. But yeah, no, it's true. It's true. We've obviously said greatest owner in football. We love him. And, regardless whether, as Charlie says, he's a dodgy man or whatever that that is about, everyone's had some dodgy business. So, it's the memories he left us with. That's what we care about. You look back, and to us Chelsea fans, you don't think, Roman Abramovich, this and that. You just look at the absolute unconditional love he had for the club and the way that he celebrated things with fans. And, you didn't really part him owner to fans. It kind of almost, that line was blurred. He was always a fan of the club and did everything to make us better, gift us the memories we have. And, the very fact that rivals will tell you that pre-Roman Abramovich, Chelsea was nothing, probably indicates just how much Roman Abramovich has done for the club. So that tells you everything you need to know without knowing who he was, what he did, and what went down when he was there. But yeah, no, it'd be certainly nice to hear some things, in his book. I think, we won't probably ever hear the full story or know the full story of how things unfolded, but certainly at least parts of it, and maybe somewhere down the line, like you guys said, we could maybe find out more. But you know, he didn't really have a chance to explain anything or hear anything that actually happened come from, you know, his own mouth. So that's always obviously, yeah, a downside to things like that. But he is thoroughly missed, and you know, the very fact that we've been protesting against our own owners now probably elevates that sentiment even more with Abramovich, because you know, nowadays football owners, you don't actually have that affinity with them that we did with Roman. So yeah.
There you go. Well, listen, guys, we're going to round it up there. Let us know if you agree or disagree with anything that we've said regarding the club. Obviously, we've got the race for Champions League football. Do you think we're actually? Do you think we're even in that race still, or is there still more to be done? Are Chelsea still in the race? Do you think we're going to sign experienced players this summer? If so, who? Let us know in the comments. And who's going to be reading Abramovich's book? I'll certainly be purchasing that. Listen, guys, all the best. Check out Charlie's channel. Check out Nina's channel in the descriptions. Subscribe to Chelsea Fan TV as well. And we will catch up very, very soon.